The flight attendant's voice elevated, clear and resonant for all to catch. I'm going to request this one final time. Please relocate to the rear of the plane, or I will have to contact security. Her words had a biting quality, her tone laced with disdain. Naomi, composed and serene, gazed up at her. I've already told you, I'm not moving, she stated plainly. Her tone was steady, nearly calming, yet it carried an unmistakable power. She faced humiliation before all, yet no one could have anticipated the turn of events when the woman they deemed powerless rose to her feet and unveiled her true identity. As we explore the narrative, if you hold the conviction that every individual deserves respect regardless of their background, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now and share your location with us. The aircraft shimmered in the warm afternoon light, its elegant contours hinting at an opulent voyage for those aboard. Within the cabin, luxury reigned supreme, featuring sumptuous leather seating, gilded details, and an atmosphere of exclusivity that enveloped all present in a sense of regal grandeur. Travelers glide effortlessly, their luxurious bags trailing behind as they are guided toward the polished private jet poised on the runway. Before long, they found their places, some engrossed in their screens, while others enjoyed the champagne graciously provided by the diligent flight attendants. Within the cabin, gentle ambient melodies float softly through the air. Among them was Naomi Williams, a serene and collected woman in her late 30s. Clad in a fitted navy blazer and coordinating slacks, Naomi radiated a subtle sophistication. She glided through the space with a subtle assurance, effortlessly blending into the background without seeking the spotlight. Naomi Williams enters the cabin, her serene demeanor captivating those around her. With deliberate steps, she scans the cabin momentarily before gliding toward her seat. Her destination was not merely another trip. It was a voyage to oversee her expanding empire, though none on board were yet aware of her identity. She found comfort in that arrangement, at least for the moment. Lauren, the lead flight attendant, stands near the entrance, her impeccably tailored uniform accentuating her sharp features that radiate authority. She acknowledges each passenger individually, her smile radiating warmth for some, while remaining more reserved for others. She takes great satisfaction in maintaining a sense of order on the plane, although her interpretation of order frequently hinges on the appearance or conduct of others. Lauren's tone takes a slight turn as she greets Naomi with a brief welcome aboard, the warmth clearly missing. Seated behind Naomi were Mr. and Mrs. Raymond. The couple in their 60s radiate the comfort of experienced explorers. Mrs. Raymond holds a petite knitting bag tightly, her fingers eager to dive into her craft. Mr. Raymond holds a neatly folded newspaper, his face reflecting a gentle curiosity as he observes the surroundings. Lauren's smile radiates warmth for them. Greetings, Mr. and Mrs. Raymond. It's wonderful to have you back with us. Naomi casts a quick look back, aware of the sharp difference in Lauren's tone. Her expression stays serene, yet her eyes reveal a keen understanding of the unvoiced tensions at work. As the other passengers find their seats, Lauren glides through the cabin, making sure everything is just right. She glances at the Raymond couple, presenting them with a cheerful smile. Is there anything you need before we depart? Mrs. Raymond gently shakes her head, her focus entirely on her knitting. Mr. Raymond gives a subtle nod toward his coffee, a clear sign of his satisfaction. As Lauren walks by Naomi, her attitude transforms once more. She casts a fleeting look at Naomi's bag, positioned tidily beneath the seat, and her lips form a tight line. She passes by, devoid of any courtesy or warmth, leaving silence in her wake. Have you ever found yourself in a scenario where an individual's demeanor changed due to looks? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Lauren Reed, in her early 40s, moved with the meticulousness of an individual who flourished in environments governed by order. Her immaculate uniform and meticulously styled hair complemented her keen demeanor. For Lauren, the significance of appearances overshadowed all else, and her assessments were quick and unyielding. Lauren's gaze sharpened as she observed Naomi getting comfortable. There was an unsettling quality about Naomi that troubled her. It wasn't her attire, nor her composed demeanor, nor the way she refrained from seeking attention like so many of the passengers Lauren considered deserving of admiration. In Lauren's thoughts, Naomi just didn't fit in. She walked towards Naomi with determined steps, her lips forming a controlled smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, her tone courteous yet laced with a hint of superiority. "It seems you may have wandered into the incorrect area." Naomi looked up at her, her demeanor serene. "I believe this is my seat," she replied, her voice unwavering. Lauren's smile remained intact, yet her tone took on an edge. "I have my doubts about that. This area is designated for our distinguished travelers." Close by, the other travelers started to take note of the interaction. A curious socialite leaned in slightly, her interest ignited as she sought a better view. A cordial entrepreneur seated nearby cast a sideways look, his expression tinged with concern at Lauren's tone. Naomi maintained her poise, her eyes unwavering as she responded, "You may want to verify your passenger list before jumping to conclusions." Lauren's eyebrows lifted, her annoyance just beneath the surface. "I don't need to check anything," she said with a cutting tone. "I can discern who is meant to be here and who is not." The atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly charged. The travelers shared furtive looks, murmuring softly amongst themselves. Some, feeling uneasy, feigned ignorance. One passenger quietly remarked, "Why doesn't she simply relocate if she's in the incorrect seat?" Another shrugged, suggesting she might be attempting to slip in for a complimentary upgrade. Lauren stood firm, arms crossed defiantly. "If you don't move to the back of the plane," she declared, her voice carrying through the cabin, "I'll have to call security." Naomi inclined her head just a touch, her serene demeanor steadfast. "Contact anyone you require," she stated. "However, I remain steadfast in my position." The inquisitive socialite inhaled sharply. The entrepreneur leaned in, his forehead creased with concern. Lauren, her frustration palpable, cast a glance at the junior flight attendant, Grace, who lingered nearby, her expression a mix of anxiety and concern. "Grace," Lauren commanded sharply, "take her to the back." At this moment, Grace paused, her gaze shifting between Naomi and Lauren. She felt the urge to voice her thoughts, to mention the idea of reviewing the passenger list as Naomi had proposed. Yet Lauren's piercing stare held her back, rendering her momentarily speechless. With a hint of hesitation, she nodded and moved ahead. Naomi adjusted her position in her seat, maintaining her composed presence. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," she said softly, her words laden with a significance that Lauren had yet to grasp. Lauren dismissed the warning with a scoff, brushing it aside. "I know precisely what I'm doing," she declared. "At this moment, rise and shine. How would you respond if you were treated this way during a flight? We'd love to hear your insights in the comments below. If you're enjoying this tale, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more captivating narratives like this one." Lauren's tone became more pointed as she motioned toward the rear of the aircraft. "You really shouldn't be here," she reiterated, her tone now laced with impatience. The onlookers observed in bewildered quiet, the atmosphere charged with an electric tension. Naomi reclined a bit, her eyes unwavering as they met Lauren's. "It's unwise to jump to conclusions about others," she remarked softly. Lauren's grin grew broader. "It's not right to occupy seats that you haven't purchased." The suspense heightened as Naomi finally reached for her phone, her serene demeanor remaining intact. She swiftly typed a few words, then placed it back on the armrest. "You're making a mistake," she stated plainly, her words lingering in the atmosphere. Lauren chose to ignore the advice given. "We'll see about that," she muttered, her hand waving once more for Grace to take action. The junior attendant moved in, her uncertainty evident as the situation progressed. Lauren's annoyance intensified as Naomi stayed seated, her calm assurance highlighting Lauren's rising agitation. The atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly charged, capturing the interest of nearby passengers who observed the interaction with a mix of intrigue and skepticism. Lauren's voice escalated, projecting clearly for all to hear. "I'm giving you one final opportunity to relocate to the rear of the plane, or I will have to involve security." Her words had a biting quality, her tone laced with disdain. Naomi, composed and serene, gazed up at Lauren. "I've already mentioned it. I'm not moving," she stated plainly. Her tone was steady, nearly calming. Yet it carried a resolute power that only served to frustrate Lauren even more. A woman in front, a curious socialite with impeccably styled hair and an aura of privilege, leaned in closer to her companion. She spoke in a hushed tone, yet it carried clearly for those around her. "It seems she's attempting to slip in for an unearned advantage." Lauren latched onto the remark, a sly grin reappearing on her face. "That's precisely how it appears," she remarked, crossing her arms and glancing at the other passengers as if seeking their backing. "There are guidelines in place for a purpose. There are individuals who simply lack respect for them." Naomi remained silent, unbothered by the barbs and the whispers that swirled around her. Instead, she maintained her focus on Lauren, her calm demeanor a subtle rebellion that resonated more profoundly than any spoken words. Grace paused for a moment, then moved closer to the passenger list attached near the cockpit door. Her fingers quivered as she perused the names, yearning to discover something that could aid Naomi. Before she had the chance to speak, Lauren erupted. "Grace, what are you up to?" Grace turned, her voice soft and delicate, almost lost in the air. "I was merely verifying. I have this situation managed." Lauren cut in, her voice edged with intensity. "There's no need for you to engage." Grace took a step back, her cheeks burning with a deep sense of embarrassment. She bit her lip, caught in a struggle between the path of integrity and the anxiety of jeopardizing her position. As the tension escalated, a gentle-faced man sitting across the aisle leaned in closer. The man in the sharp suit, radiating a sense of tranquility, offered a smile to Naomi. "Excuse me," he spoke softly. "Is everything okay?" Naomi glanced at him, her demeanor becoming gentler. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, her voice calm yet appreciative of the thoughtful gesture. Before the businessman could elaborate, Lauren interrupted, her voice laced with accusation. "Sir, I would be grateful if you could refrain from fostering the disruption." She pivoted to face Naomi, her finger jabbing in her direction. "Your actions are drawing attention." The entrepreneur scowled. "From my vantage point," he remarked with a steady demeanor, "it seems you are the one creating the spectacle." Lauren's cheeks burned with fury as she redirected her gaze towards Naomi. "I've reached my limit with this," she exclaimed. "It's time to either take action or face the consequences of being removed from this plane." Naomi held her gaze steady, unwavering. "You can give it a shot," she murmured gently. Lauren's irritation reached its peak. Her voice trembled as she inched closer to Naomi. "Why not just acknowledge that you're in the wrong seat and save us all some time?" Naomi held her tongue, her tranquility only intensifying Lauren's fury. With a huff, Lauren abandoned Naomi and stormed off to tend to her other responsibilities. Lauren glided purposefully down the aisle, the gentle sound of her polished shoes echoing on the carpet. She balanced a tray of sparkling water, her demeanor polished, yet her expression betrayed a hint of irritation. Naomi nestled into her seat, her gaze absorbed by the pages of the book she held close. Passengers engaged in quiet conversation, the ambience serene, until Lauren's underlying tension started to emerge. Naomi sat quietly, her anticipation growing as she observed Lauren attending to Mr. and Mrs. Raymond first, before turning her attention to the guests further back. Lauren, on the other hand, showed no inclination to recognize Naomi. The tray lay almost bare when Naomi finally broke the silence, her voice soft and soothing. "Would you be so kind as to bring me some water, please?" Lauren halted, casting a scornful glance at Naomi. "I'll get to you when I can," she said tersely, striding by without a second glance. Naomi's steady gaze tracked Lauren's departing silhouette, yet she chose to remain quiet. "If you observed this type of behavior, how would you respond? Would you intervene or remain silent? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below." As time ticked away, Naomi adjusted her posture in her seat, seeking a more comfortable arrangement. She extended one leg gently into the aisle, her actions subtle and unpretentious. Lauren reappeared, tray in hand, her keen gaze noticing the subtle change. Rather than requesting Naomi to shift her leg, Lauren intentionally altered her course. In a flash, Lauren's foot collided with Naomi's leg. The tray wobbled precariously, sending the glasses of water cascading forward, drenching Naomi's lap and splattering onto the floor. Lauren inhaled sharply, her voice piercing and resonant. Be mindful of where you place your legs. You've created quite a situation. Passengers glanced over, taken aback by the sudden uproar. Naomi looked up, startled but composed, her hands brushing at the water on her trousers. She stated with a composed demeanor, "Yet you collided with my leg." Naomi tilted her head slightly, her steady gaze unflinching. "All I want is to be treated with the same respect as everyone else," she responded. "If that seems like too much to request, perhaps it's you who doesn't fit in here." The phrases lingered, a subtle but forceful admonition. Lauren's cheeks burned with fury. She moved in, her irritation reaching a breaking point. "Do you really believe you can address me in that manner?" she spat, her tone cutting. In a stunning turn of events, Lauren, unable to hold back her emotions, lifted her hand and struck Naomi across the face. The sound reverberated within the cabin, piercing and startling like a sudden thunderclap. Gasps echoed among the passengers. The entrepreneur paused, his expression a blend of incredulity and frustration. Grace's hands shot to her mouth, her eyes brimming with terror. Even the inquisitive socialite seemed startled, her earlier smirk giving way to a look of discomfort. Naomi gradually straightened, her hand resting gently on her lap. Her demeanor was calm, her eyes unwavering as she met Lauren's gaze. The cabin lay in stillness, an air of tension hanging thickly around. Naomi sat up straight in her seat. Her expression remained unchanged, yet her eyes held a depth that caused Lauren to pause for the first time. "You have just committed the gravest error of your existence," Naomi remarked softly, her tone steady yet slicing through the atmosphere with precision. "How would you respond if you found yourself in Naomi's situation? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. If this tale has captured your interest, be sure to hit like and subscribe now." Naomi gazed at Lauren, her voice unwavering and calm. "I've shown you a great deal of patience, but your actions have gone too far," she stated, her tone measured and resolute. Lauren's demeanor shifted, her jaw set firmly and her hands balled into fists at her sides. "Have we gone too far?" she erupted, her tone escalating. "You've been the source of disruption ever since you boarded this plane." Naomi remained composed, showing no sign of reaction or self-consciousness. Instead, she gradually aligned her posture, her eyes locked intently on Lauren. She maintained her composure, undeterred by the overt hostility surrounding her. "You'll regret that," Naomi said softly, her voice imbued with a subtle power that resonated throughout the cabin. Lauren hesitated briefly, her self-assurance rattled by Naomi's steadfast demeanor. However, she swiftly regained her composure, letting out a loud scoff. "Do you wish you hadn't done it?" she scoffed. "What will you do next? Should we contact law enforcement?" Naomi remained silent. There was no necessity for her to do so. Her quietude conveyed deep meaning, and the travelers sensed the change in authority. From the corner of the cabin, Grace, the younger flight attendant, observed the scene unfold with a blend of dread and resolve. She had been silently watching Lauren's actions throughout the day, her unease intensifying with each fleeting moment. At that moment, she realized that remaining quiet was no longer an option. Quietly, Grace distanced herself from the chaos and retrieved her phone. With a swift motion, she pressed the digits, her hands quivering just a bit. As the call connected, her voice emerged soft yet resolute. "This Grace," she mentioned. "A situation has arisen on the plane." Grace returned to her post, her face a mix of worry and determination. Lauren, unaware of the ringing phone, stood with her arms crossed, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface while her grip on authority slipped away. Naomi sat still, her composed presence a striking counterpoint to Lauren's fury. The onlookers remained captivated, their gazes flitting back and forth between Naomi and Lauren, uncertain of the unfolding drama ahead. One of them leaned closer to Naomi, her voice soft and almost inaudible. "Are you doing all right?" she inquired, her worry sincere. Naomi glanced at her, presenting a gentle, comforting smile. "I'm fine," she murmured gently. The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with anticipation, the quiet interrupted solely by the soft drone of the aircraft's engines. The situation was evidently still unfolding. Naomi sat still, her stance unwavering even as droplets of water cascaded onto her attire. She gazed at Lauren, her tone steady yet resolute. "All that was required was for you to show me respect, yet you faltered due to your biased perspective, believing I don't have a place here simply because of your feelings." Lauren's annoyance intensified. Her hold on the tray grew firmer as she leaned in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Honor? Perhaps you ought to prove yourself first. Individuals like you have yet to earn my regard." The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with unease, as passengers cast furtive looks at one another, some fidgeting in their seats, uncertain of how to respond. The unvoiced inquiry hung in the atmosphere, to what extent would this unfold? At this moment, Naomi's fury intensified. "You really shouldn't have said that," Naomi remarked, her tone cutting yet resolute. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, making everyone in the cabin ponder the unfolding events. Lauren crossed her arms, her frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "Oh, come on," she scoffed. "I've shown you more than enough patience. Perhaps this will help you realize that every action leads to a result." Naomi's gaze sharpened just a touch, her serene composure remaining intact. "Indeed," she replied gently, choosing her words with care. "Every choice carries weight, and you're on the brink of discovering just how profound that reality can be." For a brief instant, Lauren hesitated. Naomi's tone carried an unsettling edge that sent a chill down her spine, yet she swiftly dismissed the sensation. She scoffed at his hollow threats, casually waving her hand as if to brush them aside. "You'll be the one facing the consequences, not me." Lauren averted her gaze, putting on a brave front, yet beneath the surface, a sense of discomfort started to settle in. She had crossed a boundary, and although she wouldn't acknowledge it, deep down, she was aware. The gazes of the passengers, the shock etched on Grace's face, and Naomi's serene demeanor all conspired to make Lauren feel as if the very walls were closing in around her. She attempted to dismiss it, yet her mind was in a frenzy. What if this woman is not who I believe her to be? Naomi's demeanor and her composed, authoritative speech contrasted sharply with Lauren's expectations. For the first time, a hint of uncertainty crept into her fury. Lauren's discomfort intensified as she revisited the moment in her thoughts. What held her back from yelling or resisting? What made her think I'd feel regret? Her stomach knotted as the truth dawned on her. Her bias and fury had consumed her, and now she sensed trouble looming on the horizon. Lauren surveyed the cabin, searching for a glimmer of support, yet the passengers had turned against her. The entrepreneur fixed her with a piercing gaze, his arms folded in a posture of quiet disapproval. The inquisitive socialite leaned in closer to her friend, her head shaking in disapproval. Grace appeared as though she wished to vanish, her hands shaking as she grasped the passenger list tightly. Naomi, on the other hand, stayed in her seat, her demeanor serene yet enigmatic. She crossed her legs with deliberate grace, leaning back in her seat, exuding a quiet confidence that intensified Lauren's unease. Naomi maintained a calm demeanor. There was no need for her to behave in that manner. Her silence conveyed all the truths Lauren was desperate to avoid. The atmosphere in the cabin grew heavy as Lauren struggled to assert her authority. Yet despite her efforts, an unsettling awareness lingered that her choices were on the verge of confronting her. Naomi's voice resonated within her thoughts. "You are making an error." Unbeknownst to Lauren, Naomi had already dispatched a message, and her subdued reaction to the slap was not one of submission. It was a calculated move. Unease was mounting, and Lauren was on the verge of discovering the magnitude of her error. What are your thoughts on Naomi's next steps? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you're finding pleasure in this tale, consider tapping that subscribe button. The atmosphere in the cabin was charged. As Lauren moved restlessly near Naomi's seat, her irritation simmering just beneath the surface. Naomi sat there, serene and unruffled, as if the turmoil around her had no impact. Yet, beneath the surface, Lauren sensed the heavy burden of her choices closing in on her. Without uttering a single word, Naomi instinctively reached for her phone. Her movements were purposeful as she swiftly typed something before placing the device on the armrest beside her. The action appeared straightforward, yet it held a silent intensity that caused Lauren to look at the phone with a hint of discomfort. "What do you believe you are up to?" Lauren inquired, her tone cutting through the air. Naomi hesitated before replying. Instead, she reclined a bit, her serene composure steadfast. "You'll discover the truth in due time," she murmured, her voice imbued with a gravity that intensified Lauren's discomfort. If you believe Lauren's response was excessive, go ahead and give that like button a click. Be sure to subscribe for more captivating tales like this one. The cabin descended into a tense stillness, interrupted solely by the soft drone of the plane's engines. Travelers shared furtive looks, murmuring quietly to one another. The inquisitive socialite inclined closer to her companion, her voice a mere murmur. "What's happening? Do you believe she holds significance?" The man in the suit across the aisle remained still, an understanding expression gracing his features. He drummed his fingers on the armrest, his eyes locked on Naomi, as if he had uncovered a truth that eluded everyone else. Shortly thereafter, the distinct sound of footsteps echoed from the front of the cabin. The cockpit door swung open, revealing the pilot, his face drained of color and his expression taut. He surveyed the room with a fleeting glance before striding purposefully toward Lauren, each step intentional and swift. Lauren glanced at him, her annoyance clear. "What's happening?" she inquired, her tone cutting. The pilot halted before her, his stance rigid. "You need to step aside," he said, his voice steady yet tinged with unease. Lauren furrowed her brow, a clear sign of her bewilderment. "Excuse me?" she remarked, her arms crossed defiantly. "What would prompt me to take a step back? I've got this under control." The pilot's eyes darted to Naomi before returning to Lauren. "A call just came in from management, announcing that the plane's owner is on board, Ms. Williams," as he gestured toward Naomi. His words resonated in the room, striking with the force of a thunderclap. The cabin filled with astonished gasps and whispered conversations. The inquisitive socialite took a sharp breath, her eyes growing wide as she glanced between Naomi and Lauren. "She owns the plane," she murmured, her tone laced with incredulity. The entrepreneur acknowledged with a knowing nod, his demeanor composed. A sense of certainty washed over him. He murmured quietly, as if the truth had finally validated his long-held suspicions. Grace, positioned by the galley, became motionless. A wave of relief spread across her features as the realization dawned on her. Naomi transcended the role of a mere passenger. She embodied a force far more formidable than anyone had ever perceived. Lauren, in that moment, fixed her gaze on the pilot, her complexion shifting to a concerning hue of crimson. "That simply can't be true," she faltered, her voice losing its characteristic edge. "It seems there has been an error." The atmosphere aboard the plane was thick with tension, the stillness occasionally interrupted by the steady hum of the engines. Passengers cast anxious looks at one another, the sting of the slap lingering in their thoughts. Lauren positioned herself by the aisle, arms crossed, her defiance unmistakable even as the discomfort in the air intensified. Naomi sat quietly, serene and collected, her stance as elegant as always. Suddenly, the captain's voice echoed through the intercom. "Attention, everyone. We are preparing for an unexpected landing. Kindly stay in your seats and get ready for our descent." Passengers whispered in bewilderment. The businessman leaned closer to Naomi, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on? What's the reason for our landing?" Naomi remained silent, her demeanor calm yet enigmatic. Lauren's brow knitted in concern, her self-assurance wavering as she cast a hesitant look toward the front of the cabin. The aircraft landed gracefully, and shortly thereafter, a polished black SUV arrived right at the runway. The doors swung open, revealing two impeccably attired assistants who emerged with a sense of urgency and intent in their every step. They climbed the plane's steps with a serene confidence, their presence drawing focus the instant they stepped into the cabin. "Miss Williams," one of them said with warmth, their tone filled with respect. "All preparations are complete and awaiting your feedback." Gasps echoed throughout the cabin. Lauren stood still, her complexion paling as the truth washed over her like a sudden tide. "Miss Williams," she faltered, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. The assistants overlooked her, their attention wholly directed at Naomi. "Is there anything you require before we move forward?" one of them inquired, their tone respectful. Naomi rose with a fluid elegance, each motion intentional and poised. She straightened her blazer, exuding a serene confidence that commanded attention. The passengers observed in awe as Naomi finally broke the silence, her voice firm and authoritative. "I'm Naomi Williams," she began, her eyes scanning the cabin with a thoughtful intensity. "I own this plane and I also own this airline." Lauren's lips parted and shut, yet silence enveloped her. The once self-assured, patronizing flight attendant had transformed into a mere wisp of her former self, her previous boldness now overshadowed by overwhelming fear. Naomi focused on Lauren, her voice steady yet cutting like a finely honed edge. "Lauren, your actions today have been utterly unacceptable," she stated, her voice slicing through the stillness. "You have brought shame upon yourself, disrespected a traveler, and damaged the standing of this airline." Lauren faltered, her voice quivering. I was unaware." Naomi raised a hand, bringing silence to her words. "You were unaware because you chose not to extend the courtesy that every traveler is entitled to," she stated with conviction. "Rather than approaching the matter with an open mind, you jumped to conclusions, displayed bias, and intensified a situation that could have been resolved with simple kindness." The passengers exchanged knowing glances, their previous quietude transforming into soft whispers of encouragement, their expressions radiating admiration. Mr. Raymond meticulously folded his newspaper, offering Naomi a nod of approval. Naomi rose at last, each movement purposeful and measured. She adjusted her blazer and fixed her eyes on Lauren, her expression steady yet authoritative. "Your actions are without fault, Lauren," she stated. Her tone was soft, yet it held a commanding presence that hushed the entire cabin. Lauren's gaze flitted across the room, seeking a familiar face to support her, yet she found herself alone in her plea for help. The onlookers observed in hushed anticipation, a few subtly lifting their devices to capture each fleeting instant. Naomi moved in closer to Lauren, her voice unwavering. "As you focused on your judgments," she began, "you neglected your responsibilities. It is essential to approach each passenger with dignity, regardless of their identity or any preconceived notions you may have. Now the repercussions have arrived." Lauren's hands tightened at her sides, her thoughts swirling rapidly. She felt the urge to argue, to stand up for herself, yet the words eluded her grasp. She sensed the heavy gaze of the crowd upon her, and in that moment her confidence wavered like never before. Naomi signaled to the pilot. "I need this dealt with right away," she stated firmly, "and I want to make sure it never happens again to anyone." The pilot acknowledged with a nod, his manner exuding professionalism. "Got it, Miss Williams," he replied. Lauren stepped back, her thoughts racing with anxiety. She cast a glance at the exit, her instincts urging her to flee before the situation escalated. Yet, just as she was about to act, the pilot positioned himself in her way, his demeanor resolute. "You're not going anywhere," he declared. Naomi's eyes remained steadfast. "Lauren, your behavior today has demonstrated that you are not suitable for this role. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." The words lingered in the atmosphere, heavy with the weight of a conclusive judgment. Lauren's expression twisted in dismay, and she retreated a step, her self-assurance utterly broken. "Please, Miss Williams," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't intend to. Naomi's expression grew steely. It wasn't your intention to be discovered, she remarked with an icy demeanor. Yet here you are. Now you will confront the repercussions. In that instant, 2 officers in uniform stepped onto the plane, their arrival sparking a ripple of whispers among the passengers. Lauren's complexion drained of color as they drew near. Miss Williams, one of the officers said with a tone of respect, we have received your report. Will you be filing charges? Naomi's eyes remained steadfast. Indeed, she stated with conviction. This person attacked me in the presence of several witnesses. I anticipate that she will face the consequences of her actions. Lauren inhaled sharply, retreating a step. No, please, this is a misunderstanding, she exclaimed, her voice filled with urgency. I had no intention of doing that. The officers advanced, one revealing a set of handcuffs. Ma'am, you are being placed under arrest for assault, the officer stated. Your words may be held against you in a legal setting. Lauren's breath came in rapid bursts as the grim reality of her situation set in. Her gaze darted to Naomi, who remained serene and collected, her presence a sharp counterpoint to Lauren's fraying composure. Conflict had come, and Lauren understood there was no way to evade it. This marked merely the onset of her reckoning. Onlookers stood in shocked quiet as Lauren's wrists were secured with handcuffs behind her back. She struggled to voice her objections, tears cascading down her cheeks. I'm truly sorry, Miss Williams, she cried, her voice trembling. Naomi's face showed no emotion. Your apology holds no weight without taking responsibility, she said softly. Your decisions have been made. The time has come to confront the outcomes of your actions. The onlookers observed in hushed anticipation, their gazes locked on Lauren as she glided down the aisle. The once commanding flight attendant had become a shadow of her former self, her pride giving way to a deep sense of remorse and embarrassment. Naomi faced the cabin once more, her tone unwavering as she spoke to the passengers. I sincerely regret what you all had to experience today. The level of service I received on my flights falls short of my expectations. As we progress, we will guarantee that each passenger receives the dignity and respect they rightfully deserve. The cabin burst into a chorus of applause, hands coming together in enthusiastic rhythm. Mr. Raymond let out a soft cheer, while Mrs. Raymond paused her knitting to offer a gentle clap. Naomi glanced at Grace, the younger flight attendant who had been a silent pillar of support during the entire ordeal. Grace, Naomi said, her voice gentle. Your professionalism caught my attention today. I appreciate your willingness to take action when it was crucial. Expect communication from my office regarding a promotion. Grace's eyes sparkled, and she nodded eagerly, her expression glowing with appreciation. Thank you, Miss Williams, she murmured gently. Naomi offered a fleeting smile before making her way to the exit, her assistants trailing closely in her wake. The ambience within the plane transformed entirely, the previous strain giving way to a sense of awe and comfort. Justice was delivered, and Naomi established a precedent that would remain etched in the memories of everyone aboard that flight. Should Lauren be granted forgiveness, or must she confront the repercussions of her choices? We'd love to hear your insights in the comments section below. The passengers exchanged smiles, the warmth of the moment enveloping the cabin. The curious woman who had observed the entire scene with rapt attention leaned forward in her seat. Miss Williams, you're incredible, she exclaimed, her admiration radiating vividly. Naomi faced her, a soft smile illuminating her features. Thank you, she responded. Hold on to this moment. It is always valuable to advocate for what is just. As Naomi disembarked from the plane, the crisp air of the tarmac welcomed her. The sleek black SUV lingered, its driver poised, holding the door ajar with an air of anticipation. As her assistants flanked her, providing updates on the upcoming meeting, Naomi's mind drifted, preoccupied with the day's unfolding events. In a subsequent televised interview, Naomi occupied a modern studio, her composure as graceful as always. The interviewer leaned in, visibly intrigued. Miss Williams, your narrative has captured widespread attention. A vast audience has witnessed your approach to this situation. What message do you aspire to convey? Naomi's gaze remained unwavering as she responded, her voice firm and determined. Respect is an inherent right, not something to be earned or granted, she asserted. Every individual is entitled to respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or the judgments others may hold. Genuine leadership involves establishing a benchmark and making certain it is maintained. The interviewer nodded, clearly touched. What would you say to those who encounter similar obstacles yet lack the platform you possess? Naomi's demeanor became gentler. One might argue that true strength is derived from one's inner self. Even in moments of feeling unseen, hold on to the value you possess. Respect doesn't hinge on titles or riches. Simply remain steadfast in your true self. Several weeks later, Naomi stepped onto another flight, welcomed by a new crew. The atmosphere exuded warmth, hospitality, and professionalism. The head flight attendant welcomed her with a heartfelt smile. Greetings, Miss Williams. It's a pleasure to have you here. Having you here is truly a privilege. Naomi mirrored the smile as she eased into her seat. The ambience was uplifting, the service flawless, yet above all, it radiated a sense of respect. As she looked out the window, observing the runway fade into the sky, a feeling of tranquility enveloped her. The occurrences of that day resonated deeply, affecting not only the passengers and crew who experienced it firsthand, but also everyone who followed the unfolding narrative. Naomi understood that her choices had transformed an injustice into a profound lesson, one that would resonate well beyond that solitary flight. She smiled, aware that often, the most profound triumphs transcended the mere act of winning. They focused on motivating transformation. As the passengers nestled into their seats, Naomi subtly extended her hand toward her phone. In the wake of the events that transpired, she realized this was far more than a personal matter. The focus was on transforming a framework that enabled bias and preconceived notions to flourish. As the jet ascended into the clouds, Naomi nestled into her seat at the front of the aircraft. The window next to her showcased a stunning panorama of the horizon, where the landscape below dissolved into a tranquil expanse of blue and white. She looked out at the vast expanse of the sky, a wave of tranquility enveloping her. This went beyond merely facing bias or claiming her power. It was about transforming a moment of embarrassment into a profound lesson, one that would resonate far beyond this solitary journey. Naomi smiled softly, her reflection subtly appearing in the window. She understood that this was merely the start. Through each choice, every policy, and all acts of guidance, she was crafting a future where respect and kindness became the norm, rather than the rarity. The aircraft descended gracefully, its engines purring gently as it glided toward its goal. And Naomi, positioned at the forefront of her aspirations, experienced a serene victory that no storm could ever disturb. In a public statement issued soon after the flight, Naomi addressed the world directly. Her words conveyed a message that echoed well beyond the limits of the jet. True luxury transcends mere appearances, she expressed in a poignant video that rapidly gained widespread attention. The focus lies in the journey we craft for all involved. Genuine achievement is defined not by your possessions, but by the kindness you extend to those around you. I am introducing new policies throughout my airline to guarantee that every passenger, regardless of their background, feels appreciated and respected. The statement ignited discussions throughout social media, as individuals praised Naomi's leadership and her dedication to transformation. Hashtags such as Respect Above All and #Naomi's Vision gained traction for several days, motivating individuals to contemplate their own actions and prejudices.